This is essential to the gospel because Keller's idea of social justice is that a need generates a right. If we applied that concept of justice to the gospel, to God, God is infinitely able, and we are infinitely needy in respect to him. If this concept of justice were true, then we would have a right to salvation.
Let's say you could demonstrate that a certain group of people in a culture is systematically or systemically disadvantaged because of where they grew up. From that observation alone, say it's demonstrably true, which I believe it is, does that warrant any kind of government policy that, based on their need, therefore they have a right?
No. So there might be a government policy that's causing that systematic generation of need among that community. And I would say, and a lot of times today, there are a lot of democratic policies typically that are well-intentioned or supposedly well-intentioned that are causing a lot of poverty. And so there probably are policy changes that need to be made, but it's not the ones that we might automatically think of. However, let's just say we're in a completely free society with laissez-faire capitalism consistently across the board, and it just so happens that there's a particular group of people who are very underprivileged or underdeveloped, or however you want to put it, that systematically seem to be in poverty. The question then is, should the government step in? Does the government have a role there? And I think that's what you're getting at, Cody. And the answer is no, because of what we talked about justice earlier when it comes to legal justice and the idea that a need does not give you a legal right. Being in need as such does not give you a right to the property or the help of others. And this is really important for Christians especially to grasp. If you guys haven't read my article that I recently wrote, The Theological Problem with Tim Keller's so-called social justice, I'd really highly recommend it. This is essential to the gospel because Keller's idea of social justice, especially when it comes to economics, is that a need generates a right. So if somebody or a group of people is in need, then that generates an obligation on your part to fill that need, and it generates a right on their part for your property. So the idea of justice here is from each according to their ability to each according to their need. Now, step back as a Christian and think about if we applied that concept of justice to the gospel, to God. God is infinitely able, and we are infinitely needy in respect to him. If this concept of justice were true, then we would have a right to divine help, to divine aid. We would have a right to salvation. We would have a right to heaven. And yet that flies in the face of the gospel, because the gospel says you don't have a right. You deserve hell. But this social justice idea, this idea of justice according to need, would say, no, what I deserve is for my needs to be fulfilled. And so on this idea of justice, we would be claimants against God. We would get to go to God and say, God, you owe me infinite grace. It wouldn't be called grace then. It would be called justice. But you owe me heaven. And if you don't pay up right now, then you're unjust, God.